Let's talk about board game expansions and player engagement. Now, there's this duality when I play board games. I love expansions. I love different character options. I love a massive, massive gameplay full of options. But at the same time, while I appreciate solo board gaming, and it is an important element of the hobby, and one that I play, primarily board gaming for me, it's a social engagement. It's a chance to sit down with some friends, meet some new friends, roll some dice, flip some cards, and hopefully pull off a win or at least a glorious tabletop, glorious death in that moment for the evening. So player engagement, working together as a team, whether it's a co-op game or a one versus many game like Hero Quest, I want to be engaged with that. The duality that I find and that I face is that, generally speaking, the more expansions that you add, while that gives more options and more paths to victory, it tends to decrease player engagement. Agree or disagree? And is there kind of this middle way? I'm going to talk about Talisman, one of my favorite board games. And I'm not going to get into strategy, but I'm going to framework the mechanics a little bit for those of you unfamiliar with this title, because it's a perfect example of a game that has evolved where it can go in both directions very, very easily with how you want to play. And if it is a game that you enjoy, I've pushed up to the playlist here under my YouTube channel, Talisman, where we explore the tactica of the game. So Talisman is essentially this roll and move fantasy-based game. You roll a d6, you have a character. Each character has different abilities that they can interact and powers and that they can do. And you have weapons and magic items, potions and spells and all that type of stuff. You move to a space, and the space has an action on it. Engage this, search here, draw an adventure card, fight something. And the adventure cards are a stack of cards that have various encounters. You could fight a monster. You could encounter ancient ruins or a space. Likewise, you could draw a bag of gold or perhaps a follower or a magic object. And as you go through and fight monsters, you level up craft and magic and life. These are the three stats of the game. Ultimately, when you feel powerful enough to make a perilous journey to the center of the board to claim the Crown of Command. And basically the Crown of Command lets you zap all the other players and literally crown yourself ruler of the realm. So what we have here is a timed-based competitive game where you and the other players are competing to level up as quickly as possible. And there are various ways of doing this, various strategies, and claim the crown before your rivals. Well, the more players, the better. I mean, the game wants to play, I think, around 4 to 6 players. 4 seems kind of optimal. Obviously, the more players you stack, the longer the game goes in terms of turns. I've regularly played 15 to 20 players. You can never have enough players for Talisman. And this idea with the players, the way you interact is various characters have abilities and spells that allow you to take things from other players, that allow you to immobilize other players, that allow you to influence other players. You can land on a player space and fight and steal and do all these various interactions. You could possibly, maybe, even work together to push yourself towards the Crown of Command. And then, of course, in that crucial moment, break free. So within that framework, the core game is this board that represents different realms, and in the center is the Crown of Command. But over time, there have been 2 types of expansions. Expansions that add more adventure cards, small box expansions. This is great because it's adding more character classes, more spells, more monsters, more encounters, more stuff to do in the game. And then it's added the side realms. These are big box expansions that kind of lay next to the main board, the highlands, the dungeon, the woodlands, and the city. And of course, these expansion boards are kind of their own game in itself. You go into the city and you have city encounters. You go into the dungeon, you've got dungeon encounters. And it's mix or match. You can plug and play as much as you want. What happens, though, is as you add these more expansions, so we've played a lot of games, most games with all expansions in play, all character classes in play, all options in play. You want to talk about a table hog? Talisman is where it's at. The challenge here, though, of course, is it gives you a lot more strategy options to optimize your character to make the run for the Crown of Command. And I've explored many of those options in the playlist, but it essentially removes player interaction. Unless we're playing a 15-player game, it removes player interaction to zero, and that's an important part. That is an important part of the game to explore. What I mean by that is there's 4 of us playing. Now, if we're just playing with the core game, we're in that primary board. We've got to decide what we're going to do. But if we have all the expansions, I'm jumping into the highlands because I'm going to farm some gems to turn into gold, to go into the city, to buy pets and potions. You're deciding, hey, I'm going to go into the dungeon. Risk versus reward. It has harder encounters, generally speaking, but I'm going to go in there and make my way to the treasure vault, draw the cards, and just get the heck out of there as fast as I can, cash and grab. Someone else might say, hey, I'm going to hang out on the primary board and see what I can do. Someone else might say, I'm going to go to the city and try to gamble and get some followers, and then I'm going to visit the various shops and level up that way. All completely, absolutely viable tactics, but in terms of player interaction where we're working together, or I'm trying to rob you, you're trying to rob me, I'm trying to cast spells on you, we're trying to encounter different things, we may never see each other. So this idea in board gaming, what I find more and more, generally speaking, as we add, and Arkham was notorious for this, as you add on expansions, player interaction becomes less, and then it almost becomes a solo-based game. It's like my friends are hanging out, watching me play a game, and I'm watching them play a game. So I've noticed over time, I'm kind of tweaking my expansion and how I utilize them in various games. So the one thing that I'm always using, character packs, X packs, additional stuff. When we start playing, if it's a cooperative game, like the various Zombicide titles, or a one versus many, say like Conan, or we're going into Hero Quest, then absolutely, I want to have all the character packs. So as a player, you can say, I've got like 30 characters to choose from, and you can pick the character that you want, as opposed to maybe just the core, 5 or 4 in the starter set. But beyond that, we might add some more gear. We might add some more monsters if they're available. But different sideboards and realms and big box expansions, I tend to stay away from those because I want to encourage that player interaction. I want us to be all on the same board, literally working together as a team. So if it's something I'm bringing to the club or to play with some friends, we keep it on that one board. But if it's a solo type play, and I do play titles regularly solo. Sometimes my work schedule gets a little crazy. I don't get home till 1 a.m, got to unwind. And if I'm like, look, if I get to bed by 2 a.m., that's good. So for an hour, I'm going to go old school analog and play some tabletop solo board games. If that happens, I'm the only one making all the decisions. I'm laying everything out. I'm using every expansion. I'm on the main gaming table. I've got a side gaming table. I've got a sub gaming table. We're just moving on and on and on. So I find that to be kind of the matrix that I utilize. And again, being a completionist and collecting board games, I always try to acquire everything for a title that I enjoy in my collection. But if it's to the club, compact, player interaction, small footprint. We're all forced to fight each other or get along. If it's a solo game or maybe a 2-player game, maybe 3, where player interaction wasn't going to be that much anyway, then perhaps we'll branch out. Solo play, absolutely everything goes into play.